Welcome back to In the Know. Today we are talking about fitness misconceptions, and our guest expert is Igor Klibanov. So we've talked about why dieting is bad, why the scale is bad, how to assess our body, and now we're talking about stretching and how to stretch properly.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
This is a loaded question, how to stretch properly.
Very loaded question. First of all, let's differentiate between different types of stretching. There is static stretching, which is what most people think of when they stretch. For example, a person puts up their leg onto a platform and then reaches for it. There's dynamic stretching, which is, for example, leg swings, and there is ballistic stretching. This is, you see runners doing this a lot, not necessarily the healthiest mode of stretching. They'll put their leg up on a platform and bounce at the end range. Not necessarily the healthiest, but we'll leave that to the side for now. So there are different types of stretching. There is also, this is going to be very contrary to what a lot of people think, there is too much flexibility. There is too little, too much, and just right. A lot of people don't think that too much is a bad thing, but it is. Imagine this. Your doctor gives you some pills for blood pressure, let's say. He gives you one pill and you have to take it once a day. He tells you it's going to lower your blood pressure, do this once a day, it's going to lower your blood pressure in 2 months. Well, you're thinking to yourself, more is better. If I take 3 pills, it's going to lower my blood pressure 3 times as fast, right? Not necessarily. It's going to be more damaging than good. Same thing with flexibility. Too much is as bad as too little, sometimes worse, because it makes joints unstable. You don't have the strength to back up that flexibility. So exactly how should you stretch for your body? First of all, get an assessment done. Figure out which muscles are short, which muscles are too long. Because often, muscles that are too long feel tight. It's not that they're tight, they're actually taut. Taut means too long, tight is too short. Very often, this is very, very common, particularly for people who are desk-bound. Hamstrings, are felt tight. Do you ever get that yourself? Yes. Yeah. That may not be the case. You actually have to assess somebody's posture. If their pelvis is tilted forward, which it is in a good chunk of the population, hamstrings are generally taut. They're not tight. If the pelvis is tilted backward, then the hamstrings are tight and they can benefit from stretching. But usually people who stretch their hamstrings, when they're too long already, they get temporary relief for maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, and then back to tight. So they have to keep stretching it to give it some temporary relief. But they're doing more damage than good long term because they're making the hamstring even longer than it should be, when realistically, they will get much more benefit. Their hamstrings will feel much less tight if they actually strengthen the hamstrings and strengthen the key muscles that the hamstrings are compensating for. For example, the glutes, hip flexors, abdominals, lower back. So it's a very integrated symphony in a sense, that each muscle has to be just the right amount of length, just the right amount of tension. So that's very, very important. Furthermore, posture really affects exactly which muscles are tight and which muscles are taut. For example, there is a classic sway back and there's a hunchback, okay? So what can happen is you can have an exaggerated lower back curve, which is very common in the majority of the population. That means the hip flexors are tight. The hip flexors are the muscles that run from the lower back to the front of the thigh, okay? If they're tight, you can stretch them and strengthen the glutes simultaneously, and that's going to get rid of the sway back, provided you do it properly. The opposite of that is a flat lower back, not enough of a curve in the lower back. So by strengthening the lower back, by strengthening the hip flexors, you can actually remedy that problem. But it has to be properly assessed on a case-by-case basis. So just because the hamstrings feel tight doesn't necessarily mean they are tight.
So don't assume that you've got a tight hamstring or a tight glute without getting it properly assessed, and then treat the condition.
Bingo, you got it exactly.
All right, excellent. We've got Kathleen on the line. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi there.
Do you have a question for Igor?
I do. So what you're saying about the hamstrings really resonates with me. Mine are always feeling tight, so I stretch them, and I only get temporary relief, but it always comes back. How do I correct it for good?
So what you want to do is get the surrounding muscles also tested. Test your quads, test your hip flexors, test your glutes, test your lower back, and test your abdominals. I know it's hard to do when you're not really educated in the anatomy, but if you can get a professional to do it, and they will assess exactly what's tight, what's taut. Whatever is tight, they will stretch if it's truly tight. Whatever is taut, they will shorten. You actually want decreased inflexibility there. So that's exactly how you can actually eliminate hamstring tightness without actually necessarily stretching it. So that's exactly how you can do it.
Thanks, Kathleen. Okay, so that's, you know, people may assume that they have tight hamstrings, for example, if they're not doing any form of exercise, sitting at a desk. What if you've started an exercise regime, and this always happens, day one, you go full out, you go hard, and then the next day you can't walk, and 3 days later you can't walk, and you're sore. That's not necessarily a bad sore.
Correct. As long as you're sore in the right places, you can be sore inside the joint, which is terrible, or you can be sore inside the muscles, which is just fine.
And how do you stretch those muscles? Because that's good sore, right?
That's good sore. And here's one very, very easy, simple, dirt cheap trick that's going to prevent soreness entirely before it even starts. As soon as you can after the workout, take a cold bath or a cold shower, and it's going to diminish. Or
cold? Why cold?
Well, here's what happens. What happens when your muscles are sore? Well, they're inflamed, right? Two things can decrease the inflammation. One is anti-inflammatories, which I don't want to prescribe, and two is cold, right? When something is inflamed, you put ice on it, right? But because your chances are after a new workout you're going to be sore all over, it's not practical to put ice all over the body. So take a cold bath or a cold shower. That instantly decreases the soreness that you're going to feel the next day. But here's this thing. Some masochists out there actually like soreness, so that there's no additional benefit to doing cold showers or cold baths unless you absolutely hate the feeling of soreness. So that's a very quick way to eliminate it.
Okay. Any other tips? We've got a couple minutes before we go to break. So stretching for different body types. As you mentioned, everyone's different. And you need to get a proper assessment in order to figure out what your ailments are.
Right. Exactly. So here's something interesting. Most people who like to stretch are already flexible enough, and they may be too flexible. The people who really love to stretch, they may need strengthening. People who hate to stretch, on the opposite side of the spectrum, they may need extra stretching, even though they like weights or cardio or something like that. So you really have to figure out, and usually for most people it's intuitive. They know what they're missing, and yet they still won't do it. But it's very, very important for your general musculoskeletal health to figure out exactly what's tight, what's not tight, and address it. Because if you like weight training or you like doing cardio, this is really going to prolong your career, prolong the healthy part of your career. If you like stretching, again, you can have too much flexibility. You can supplement that with weight training, strength training. It doesn't actually have to be lifting weights. It can be any other form of resistance training, and that's going to prolong your stretching career. So there has to be a healthy balance of everything to make sure you're healthy long term. If you enjoy doing whatever you're doing, making sure your musculoskeletal health is taken care of. This is going to prolong your career for a long time. So that's very important.
Good advice. Don't go anywhere. More in the know when we come back. We are talking about the dreaded midsection and how to get rid of additional fat around the abdominal area. Don't go anywhere.